Bakers don't judge a loaf by the label. They judge it by how it behaves. And there's one check that takes 2 seconds. Don't slice your bread. Tear it. Pull a slice apart with your hands, slowly, and look at the edge where it came apart. Real bread shreds. It pulls into strands, rough and uneven, because something inside it was built slowly. Most supermarket loaves don't do that. They split clean, like foam. That's not a small detail. That's the whole story of what happened to American bread. And it's sitting in your kitchen right now, waiting to be tested. 10 checks a baker would run on the loaves most Americans buy. The 3 kinds that pass. And at the end, the one test that costs about $5 and settles the argument for good. Go grab your loaf. Let's get into it. Check number 10. Squeeze the whole loaf. Before you open anything, before you read a single word on the bag, do this. Take the loaf in both hands, gently, the way you'd test a pillow. Press it in toward the middle, then let go and watch what it does. A loaf from a bakery gives you resistance. It compresses some, maybe a third of the way, and when you let go, it comes back most of the way, but not all of it. There's a slight memory left in it, a little dent. Something in there is holding a shape, and it's tired now. Now do it with a packaged sandwich loaf. Most of them collapse. The whole loaf folds down to a fraction of its size, almost no resistance at all, and then springs back out to full size like nothing happened. No dent, no memory, perfect recovery every time. Sit with that for a second because most people have done this their whole lives without thinking about it. You've squeezed loaves in the store to see if they're fresh. You've felt that bounce and read it as soft, and soft as good. But here's what a baker sees in that bounce. A loaf that compresses that far and recovers that completely is telling you how much of it is air and how little of it is structure. The bread part, the actual walls holding those air pockets apart, is thin enough that it folds without breaking and springy enough to snap back without tearing. That is not how a wall behaves. That's how a sponge behaves. Now, I want to be careful here, because there's a claim floating around that this means you're paying for air instead of bread. That's not right, and I won't repeat it. Bread in this country is sold by weight, and the net weight is printed on the package. You're getting the ounces you paid for. The question isn't how much, it's what those ounces are doing. And a loaf that folds to nothing and bounces back perfectly is a loaf whose structure was built to do exactly that. Remember how that felt in your hands. We'll come back to it. Check number 9. Press one spot with your thumb. That last check was about the whole loaf. This one is about a single point, and it tells you something different. Take one slice, lay it flat on the counter, press your thumb into the middle of it, firmly, for about 3 seconds. Then lift your thumb and watch. On a well-made loaf, the dent stays. Not forever, it'll relax over a minute or two, but it stays long enough for you to see it. Your thumb left a mark. The bread accepted the pressure and held the record of it. On most packaged sandwich bread, the dent is gone before your thumb is. It doesn't fade, it erases. Instantly, completely, back to a smooth surface as if nothing touched it. People read that as freshness. It looks like resilience. It looks like the bread is so soft and so alive that it just bounces back. Here's the thing a baker notices. That kind of instant, total recovery is not what a gluten network does. A real gluten structure is elastic, yes, but it's also a little bit plastic. It gives, and part of that giving is permanent. Push it, and some of the push stays. What you're feeling in that instant snapback is a different kind of elasticity. Something in that loaf is providing spring without providing the structure that normally comes with it. It behaves less like a network of protein strands and more like a foam. I'm not going to explain how that happens yet. There's a specific reason for it, and it's the same reason behind almost everything else in this video. That's check number 2, and we'll get there. For now, just note it. Whole loaf, folds and recovers. Single slice, dent erases. 2 different observations, both pointing at the same missing thing. Check number 8. Tear it, don't cut it. This is the one from the very beginning, and now let's do it properly. Take a slice and pull it apart with your fingers, slowly, from the middle outward. Don't rush it. Watch the edge as it separates. What you want to see is shredding. Strands. Little threads of bread that stretch and hold on before they give way, leaving a ragged, fibrous, uneven edge. When a baker pulls a good loaf apart, It looks almost like pulling apart cooked chicken. You can see the grain. What you'll get from a lot of packaged bread is a clean break, almost no strands. The two halves separate along a smooth line with a fine, powdery, uniform edge, like tearing a piece of dense foam in half. Now, I need to be honest with you about this test, because you'll see it stated online as if it's a simple pass or fail, and it isn't. A soft sandwich loaf is never going to shred like a rustic country bully. That's not the comparison. A well-made sandwich bread has a fine, tender crumb by design, and it will tear more cleanly than a big, open crumb loaf. This isn't bread versus not bread. It's a scale. And what's being measured on that scale is how developed those protein strands are. More strands, more stretch, more raggedness in the tear. That means more of something went into building that dough. Less of all of it means less. So don't use this test to convict a loaf. Use it to compare. Tear your usual loaf, then tear a slice from a bakery loaf. Put the two torn edges side by side on the counter and just look at them. That comparison will tell you more in 5 seconds than the front of either package will tell you in 5 minutes. Check number 7. Hold a slice up to the light and look at the holes. Now we go inside the bread. Take one slice and hold it up against a window or a lamp so the light comes through it. Get close. Look at the pattern of the air pockets. Bakers call it the crumb. On a loaf that was given time, that pattern is a mess in the best way. Big holes next to small holes, some stretched sideways, some round, some almost closed. Nothing repeats. Every slice looks a little different from the one before it. On a lot of packaged bread, hold it up to the light and you'll see something almost startling once you notice it. The holes are all roughly the same size, small, tight, evenly distributed across the entire slice, like the inside of a foam mattress. And the next slice looks identical, and the one after that. That uniformity isn't an accident, and it isn't a mystery either. Here's what causes it, and it's a piece of straightforward mechanics. When dough is mixed at very high speed with a lot of force, the mixing itself drives air into the dough and chops those air bubbles into smaller and smaller pieces. More energy into the mixer means smaller air cells and a more uniform grain throughout the loaf. That's not a secret. It's a known and documented effect of high-energy industrial mixing. So, an even, tight, repeating crumb is the fingerprint of a machine doing in minutes what would otherwise happen another way entirely. That other way is what check number 2 is about. Hold that thought. If your own loaf is starting to look different to you right now, you're about a third of the way in. The next few checks are where this stops being about texture. And one of them, check number 2, explains every single thing you've seen so far. Check number 6, open the bag and just smell it. Put down the slice. Open the bag, put your face near the opening, and breathe in. Don't taste anything yet. Just smell. A bakery loaf smells like something happened to it. There's a yeasty, slightly sour, slightly beery note underneath the toasty smell of the crust. If it's a sourdough, that sourness is right up front. Even a plain white bakery loaf has a faint tang, a smell with some complexity to it, something your nose has to work at a little. Now smell a typical packaged loaf. Most people find one of two things. Either it smells faintly sweet, like the inside of a bakery display case rather than the bakery itself, or it smells like almost nothing at all, a little like the plastic bag, a general impression of bread and not much underneath it. Here's why a baker cares about this, and I'll be straight that this is the softest test in the video because noses disagree. Flavor in bread isn't added, it's produced. While dough sits, yeast and bacteria are slowly working through the sugars in the flour and creating hundreds of aromatic compounds as byproducts. That's where the smell of real bread comes from. It isn't an ingredient, it's a byproduct of waiting. So, when a loaf smells like very little, it isn't necessarily that anything was taken out. It's that not much was ever produced. And when a loaf smells mostly sweet, that sweetness usually came from a bag, not from the dough. Your nose is doing something no label can do here. It's telling you whether anything interesting happened inside that bread before it got wrapped. Quick thing before number 5. Go to your kitchen, open the bag, and just smell it. Don't taste it yet, just smell. Then tell me in the comments what you got. Yeast and grain. Something sweet. Or nothing at all. I'm honestly curious how many of you have never once stopped to smell your own bread. Check number 5. Chew a plain piece, slowly, with nothing on it. That last check was your nose before eating. This one is your mouth during. Take a bite of a plain slice. No butter, no toaster, nothing. Chew slowly and pay attention to one thing only: how long it lasts. A bakery loaf pushes back. There's chew to it. You work through it, and there's a moment where you're aware of the texture between your teeth, resisting a little before it breaks down. A lot of packaged bread does something different. It disappears. 2 or 3 chews and it's gone, collapsed into a soft paste and washed away, almost like cotton candy dissolving. There's very little resistance at any point. That texture is doing a specific job, and it's worth understanding rather than just judging. Fine. Refined flour with a very fine crumb structure breaks down fast in the mouth. It's engineered for softness and easy eating, which is genuinely what a lot of people want in a sandwich loaf. Nobody's hiding that. But notice what it means about the structure. All those observations are lining up now. It folds without breaking. The dent erases, it tears clean, the holes are all the same, and now it dissolves rather than resists. 5 different checks, 5 different senses and motions, all of them describing a loaf that has very little internal structure holding it together. Something has to be doing that job instead. That's check number 2. Check number 4. Toast a slice and watch the edges. Put a plain slice in the toaster on a medium setting and stand there and watch it. Don't walk away. This one is about timing. A bakery slice browns fairly evenly. The surface goes from pale to gold across the whole face of the slice, and the edges follow along at about the same pace. Pull it out, and it's crisp on the outside with an interior that's still soft and a little moist. A lot of packaged bread behaves differently in the toaster. The edges and the thin high points go dark fast, sometimes quite dark, while the middle of the slice is still pale. And when you pull it out and bite it, the outside is crisp for about 10 seconds. Then it goes leathery, chewy rather than crisp. The middle never really dried out. 2 things are happening, and neither one is sinister. The first is sugar. Sweeteners brown faster than starch under heat. The more added sugars in a loaf, the more quickly the outer surfaces darken, and the more likely you are to get scorched edges around a pale center. That's not a flaw in your toaster. That's the recipe showing up under heat. The second is moisture. A loaf built to stay soft on the shelf is holding onto water tightly, and ingredients that hold water in bread don't let go of it easily, just because you've applied heat for 90 seconds. Crisp requires dryness. If the bread won't dry, it won't crisp. It'll toughen instead. So, the toaster is a small oven that runs your loaf's recipe in front of you. Scorched at the edges and leathery in the middle tells you something about what's in there. It doesn't require a single word from the label. And look, none of this means you did anything wrong. You bought the loaf that was in front of you at the price that made sense from a shelf that gave you no way to check any of this. Nobody hands you a tear test at the register. The good news is how fast this changes. 1 loaf, 1 afternoon. That's the whole fix, and it's waiting at the end of this video. Check number 3 is the one most people find hardest to believe until they try it themselves. It takes a week of doing absolutely nothing, and what you don't see happening is the entire point. Stay with me for that one. Check number 3. Leave a slice out and forget about it. This test takes no effort at all. Take 1 slice, set it on a plate on the counter uncovered, and go live your life. Check on it in a few days. Then check again next week. Here's what a baker expects. A bakery loaf with no preservatives starts to change almost immediately. Day 2, it's firmer. Day 3, it's noticeably hard. By the end of the week, it's either dry as a rusk or it's growing something. That's the normal, expected life cycle of bread that's made of flour, water, salt, and yeast. That's why bakeries bake every morning. Not as a charming tradition, as a necessity. In a working bakery, a 3-day-old loaf isn't a fresh loaf you can still sell. It's yesterday's problem. Now leave a slice of typical packaged sandwich bread on that same counter. Many people find it still soft after a week, still soft after 2. In some cases, weeks pass and there's still no visible mold and no real hardness. It's sitting there, uncovered, in a warm kitchen, behaving as if time is not passing. Now, I want to reframe this carefully, because you've probably seen this test used as a scare, and that's not what it is. A loaf that lasts is not automatically a bad loaf. Mold prevention is a real and useful thing, and food that doesn't spoil quickly means less waste and lower cost, which matters to a lot of households. But here's the baker's point, and it's a different one. Softness after weeks isn't freshness. Freshness is a moment. It's a thing bread has and then loses. What you're looking at on that plate is a loaf that was designed to simulate the feeling of freshness for as long as possible after freshness itself has ended. That's an engineering achievement built for a supply chain, for shipping distances, shelf space, and return rates. It is not a sign that the bread on your counter is somehow more alive than the one from the bakery. It's the opposite. It's a loaf that stopped changing because so much was done to it that there isn't much left in there that can change. Check number 2. The one that explains everything above it. Every check so far has described the same missing thing from a different angle. Folds without breaking, dent erases, tears clean, holes all the same size, dissolves in 3 chews, never goes stale. Here's the answer, and it isn't an ingredient. It's time. Traditional bread dough sits. After mixing, it goes through a long bulk fermentation. Hours, sometimes overnight, sometimes a full day for a sourdough. During that time, 2 things are being built at once. The yeast is producing gas and flavor compounds, and the gluten in the protein network is slowly organizing itself into long, strong, elastic strands, largely on its own, just from sitting there and being folded now and then. That weighting is what puts structure into bread. The strands that make it shred when you tear it, the uneven holes, the chew, the smell, every single one of those things is a byproduct of hours passing. Industrial bread production doesn't have those hours. The systems used for large-scale pan bread are known in the trade as no-time dough methods, and the name says it plainly. Instead of a long bulk fermentation, the dough is developed in a sealed, extremely high-speed mixer in a matter of a few minutes. Then, it gets a short proof, often something like 45 minutes to an hour, and it goes to the oven. Start to finish, flour to wrapped loaf can be around 3 to 3.5 hours. But you can't just skip the waiting and get the same dough. Something has to do the work the hours were doing. And that's exactly what dough conditioners are for. Ascorbic acid, datum, sodium stearoyl lactylate, L-cysteine. These are the standard tools of the no-time dough, and each one substitutes for part of what time used to provide, strengthening the protein network, relaxing the dough so machines can handle it, stabilizing the gas bubbles so the loaf rises tall and holds its shape. Read that again, because it's the whole video in one sentence. The additives in industrial bread aren't there to make it taste better, and they aren't there to fool you. They're there because the time was removed, and something had to replace it. That's why the dent erases. The spring is coming from emulsifiers, not from a slowly built protein network. That's why the holes are all identical. They were chopped fine by mixer energy in minutes, not grown unevenly over hours. That's why it tears clean, and why it barely smells like anything. Flavor and structure were both on the clock, and the clock was cut. Nobody removed the flour. They removed the weighting, and then they bought it back with chemistry. One clarification, because I want this to be accurate. The best-known version of this approach was developed in Britain in the 1960s, and American plants used their own related systems, sponge and dough methods, and various no-time dough systems. The specific name on the process varies. The principle doesn't. Speed is the goal, and additives are how speed becomes possible. Check number 1. Bake 1 loaf yourself. This is the last test, and it's the only one that requires you to do more than look. It's also the one that makes every check in this video make sense at once. Flour, water, salt, yeast, that's it. That's bread. Total cost is a few dollars, and most of an afternoon, and almost all of that afternoon is waiting, not working. You mix it. You let it sit for a few hours, you shape it, let it rise again, and bake it. The active part of your involvement is maybe 15 minutes spread across the day, and then you run the 10 checks on your own loaf. Squeeze it. It resists and holds a dent. Press it. Your thumb leaves a mark that fades slowly. Tear it. It shreds into strands and leaves a ragged edge. Hold it to the light. The holes are all different sizes, and no 2 slices match. Smell it. Yeast, warmth, a little sourness. Chew it, it pushes back. Toast it, it browns evenly and goes genuinely crisp. And leave a slice on the counter. In 3 days, it's hard, and in a week, it's done. Every single check that packaged bread failed, your loaf passes. Not because you're a skilled baker. You just made your first loaf. You passed because you gave the dough the one ingredient the factory can't afford to give it. You waited. That's the whole difference. Not a secret formula, not expensive flour, time. So, those are the 10 checks. Here are the 3 kinds of bread that pass them, and none of them require you to memorize a brand name. The first is a real bakery loaf. Not the packaged aisle, the bakery counter, or a local bakery in your town if you still have one. Read the ingredients if they're posted and you'll often find 4 or 5 things. It'll cost more. It'll be hard by Thursday. Both of those are exactly what a passing loaf looks like. The second is a short ingredient loaf from the freezer section. If a packaged bread has a genuinely short ingredient list and no shelf life engineering, it physically can't sit at room temperature for a month, so it has to be sold, frozen, or refrigerated. That inconvenience is the proof. When you find bread in the freezer case with an ingredient list you can read out loud, that's a loaf that couldn't cheat the clock. And the third is the one you bake. Cheapest per loaf, passes every test, and it turns the whole subject from something you have to worry about into something you know how to do. Here's the one rule that replaces every test in this video. Tear it, don't slice it. If a slice shreds when you pull it apart, someone gave that dough time. If it splits clean like foam, something was added to skip the time. That's it. One motion at your own counter before you ever read a label. You don't need a lab, and you don't need to take my word for any of this. Buy your usual loaf, tear a slice with your hands instead of cutting it, and look at the edge. Then leave a slice on the counter for a week and look again. Your own 2 hands will tell you more than the front of that bag ever will. And if you know someone who's been buying the same loaf for 20 years and has never once torn a slice open and really looked at it, send them this. Let their hands tell them.